there's value in that.
Oh, there certainly is. Yeah, it reminds me back of my computer company days. The best clients were usually ones that had a failure already, right. With some other big box company or big computer maker, and it went south for whatever reason.
Howdy. Welcome to the Idea to Impact podcast. This is episode 8, and it's part 2 of our interview with Chris Scotti from the Texas A&M Engineering Experimental Station, who is also the chair of the Texas New Ventures Competition, the TNVC, where early stage companies get a chance to perfect their entrepreneurial pitch and not only make great contacts, but also get some startup capital. So you're going to learn from Chris today some of the important things to think about if you're an early stage company on perfecting your entrepreneurial pitch. Let's get started.
Because, all right, instead of going 3 more years trying to pursue this, this technology, this potential opportunity, you can now take what you learned, go back and pivot, and not invest your energy in something that's ultimately not going to be a success. You realize that early, you save money and you save a whole lot of time.
And I remember Omar talking about Omar Hakim about how he's been involved with Aggie Angel investors, and talking about they've had a guy that he failed 5 times and he was on his 5th company, and for the guy it almost gave him more clout because they knew that he had learned something from each of those 5 failures, and he was continuing to push forward with new ventures and new technologies. But you learn so much when you learn that your baby is ugly and that you can pivot or move on to something else. Like there's value in that.
Oh, there certainly is. Yeah, it reminds me back of my computer company days. The best clients were usually ones that had a failure already, right. With some other big box company or big computer maker, and it went south for whatever reason. The same is true here. The folks that have gone through and the process and fell out at some point are usually the ones that are going to come back and be the more successful ones, because they're willing to listen and bring in the help that they need. And they know where their strengths are too. Yeah. So they can focus on leveraging those strengths.
Yeah. Maybe it's a good time to talk about the Texas New Venture Competition, TNVC. We've been talking about it a lot as far as referring to it, but a lot of folks that are watching or listening to you right now might not know about it. Could you give us the essential pitch on what is TNVC, who can play, what are the benefits, et cetera?
Sure. So TNVC is a unique competition, certainly in this region. You hear a lot about different business plan or pitch competitions and things like that all around. And those are a great piece of the process. But our goal as an office and with TNVC is a little different in that we want to actually see impact with these technologies. Mm-hmm. We're not trying to teach folks entrepreneurship. There is a place for that, but that's not our goal. Our goal is to actually get science and engineering-based technologies out to market so that they can make an impact on society. That takes commercial viability to get there. So TNVC is all about recognizing the best players and providing them the tools to catalyze or speed up their path to market. And it's open to companies. And I stress companies because this is not an idea competition. Okay. To be a real company doesn't mean they have to have a product in the market yet. Doesn't even mean they have to have a complete management team. But they got to have a real company. They got to be ready to receive a check, and it has to be based on some kind of science or engineering technology. It's not apps. It's not like a little consumer widget you invented in your garage type of thing. This is a real, it doesn't have to come out of a research institution, but many of the successful technologies do. They have to be early stage, and we define that by saying that they have to be raised less than $2.5 million in funds. And majority of the companies have raised somewhere in the $500,000 to $1 million range. So they've all raised, the more successful ones have raised some money, usually that early kind of pre-seed or seed stage funds. They also have to have less than $250,000 of revenue. All right. And that's really to say that we're not looking for companies that have made a bunch of money already. You know, we're almost all the companies that do well have zero revenue. Okay. Because that's where our defined gap is. All right.
Gotcha.
And a moment ago, I said you don't necessarily have to have a complete management team. The most successful companies that navigate our program have at least recognized what their management team needs to look like. Mm-hmm. Right. So one of the early technologies that I advised on, it was a university technology. It spun out. They didn't have their CEO yet. They had a couple of technical guys running it. But you know what? When they got to the team slide of their pitch, they showed an empty shadow box of their CEO and said to the audience, hey, part of the money, part of the use of funds that we get today is going to be to fill that box right there. Because I know I'm not the guy. I'm the guy that can work the lasers in the background. Right. But I need to hire the guy that can come talk to folks like you about raising funds. And having that sort of humble admission that your team is not complete goes much further than trying to, frankly, BS the audience into thinking you've got the dream team now. All right. Mm-hmm. So TNVC really has this process. It starts out every February with an application. But really that's when it officially starts, but it really goes before that, where we get referrals from entrepreneurial support organizations from around the state of Texas. That means incubators, accelerators, tech transfer offices from all over the state get referred into this program. They apply, includes a video pitch, short video pitch. And we use a group of screeners, we call them, to actually evaluate those technologies behind the scenes. We do it virtually and have even pre-COVID. And these are folks like PhD level experts in a certain field. Like you're coming in with a new heart device, then we might take a biomedical engineering PhD to help evaluate the technology.
You're trying to see if it works? Sorry,
yeah. I was going to evaluate. Yeah.
Sorry, Elizabeth?
But what do you mean by evaluate? Like, you're evaluating whether it's actually going to work, or?
Yes. Now, it's not like they're putting hands on every technology, but it's looking, okay, is this realistic? Is it, is it actually attainable?
Right.
Are they making claims that are valid? All right. Mm-hmm. And speaking of claims, it's not just on the technology side, it's also on the IP side. All right. Mm-hmm. So we have IP experts take a look at the patent space that technology is in, and make sure, that they've got something novel, because that's an important piece of the commercialization process. Because it's hard to invest in something if there's a bunch of other people doing the same thing.
And hopefully they've already done some of that before they apply.
Yes, the good ones too. But this is the beauty of a program like this. I mean, we get close to 100 applicants every year, all right? And we kick out 80% of those, all right? Those 80% know why they got kicked out. We always provide feedback, all right? Because it's not our goal to just identify the best. We're trying to make a change in the ecosystem here. Mm-hmm. So we're giving them some valuable feedback. Well, maybe you're weak in the IP area, or maybe your team is deficient in some way. It's not like we're getting involved in individually coaching these folks, but we're taking that feedback, anonymizing it from our experts, and providing it back to them in a way that hopefully they can apply and come back next year. Or more.
I was going to ask that. Do you have any data on the ones who don't make it but implement your feedback and then either come back or go somewhere else but have a success? Or
it'd be interesting to go and look at that.
What's the value of the feedback, right?
Yes.
Impact of it.
It's a conversation we've started to have with the Mays Innovation Research Center, but anecdotally, I will tell you that some of the companies that come back, all right, that failed for whatever reason the year before to make it all the way to the finals, have a much better chance at making it in subsequent years. All right. They typically do much better. And it's not only them telling us what we want to hear. They have made an advancement in an area where we felt like they were deficient. Maybe they hired somebody, or they built the board of directors. Maybe they advanced the technology one more TRL level, so that they can prove that it works to a degree that our investor judges will like. So yeah, they come back and do better. But you know, I think we're going to be able to pull some numbers out that prove that in more than an anecdotal way.
Okay, so I want to get involved with this TNVC. I meet the initial criteria that you mentioned as far as my revenue, real company, idea of a management team. What else do I need to do to qualify? Do I have to be in Texas? I know it's a Texas new venture competition. Does it have to be a Texas-based company? How does that work?
Yes, though I'll tell you that's a little bit loose. All right.
It has to have a connection with Texas, I guess?
Yes, it has to be doing business in Texas, okay?
Gotcha, okay.
We all know, everybody's registering their company in Delaware. Okay,
That's
so
right.
not like we got to prove that you're registered in Texas.
Right.
Everybody has distributed workforces, so it's not like 100% of your employees have to be here.
Sure.
Now, leadership probably ought to be here, and by definition, these are small companies, so you should be operating here. But to give you an example of what's okay, a lot of our companies go through programs like the Texas Medical Center Accelerator. A lot of our science companies go through there. Well, they've got to be a resident there in order to participate in that program. All right. We allow that residency to count.
Gotcha.
Now, our ulterior motive, because the organization I work for has an economic development mission to it. Part of our motive is that we'll keep at least some of these companies here in Texas. Right. And we'll provide them the resources that they need instead of having to go to one of the coasts to get the funding and help that they need. We're providing them some funding and, more importantly, a bunch of connections to help their company succeed here in Texas. So there is a little bit of room there, but no, we're not inviting folks to come in and apply and be part of this competition from outside the state of Texas. They have to be, have a meaningful operation in the state.
And do I have to have a connection with Texas A&M? Or is it just the state?
In fact, Texas A&M has never had won first place in its own competition.
Okay.
We have our own competitors that go through, and we've learned some of the things that we are lacking inside our own university ecosystem that some of our peers have successfully implemented. So no, you definitely do not. The majority of the winners are coming out of Houston, Austin, San Antonio, all over the state of Texas.
Well, Chris, what are some of those things? Can you talk about some of those things that you think our ecosystem here at A&M is missing? Because I know we've talked with our guests in the past. That's one of our goals as innovation partners, is to help create that ecosystem of entrepreneurship. So, what are we lacking? And what are we doing well, if anything?
Yeah.
So, 6 years, I can give you a real number. All right, and this is helping us advance some of the. Getting some of these initiatives or some of these gaps filled already here at A&M. All right, so we know 6 years of doing the program, all but one of the top 6 companies, all but one of the finalists in all of those years has emerged from some type of entrepreneurial support organization. And I define ESO as a mentor-driven entrepreneurial support program. That could be I-Core, that could be that TMCX accelerator, that could be startup Aggieland, it could be Capital Factory, Austin Technology Incubator, any of those type of incubator, accelerator, or mentor-driven program. We know that virtually all of the successful companies are coming out of some program like that and are heavily engaged in it. That is a critical piece. And guess what? A&M does not currently have a program like that. It has pieces of programs like that. There is no kind of central entrepreneurial support organization that's currently serving our commercializing technology.
That's the systematic thing that you were talking about, right? We want to make it larger, right? Yeah.
There needs to be some sort of flow. Like you go through a program like I-Core and you emerge from that program. Well, if you're a go, now it's time to form a company and build a team and maybe start refining your pitch and building your business plan, right? Well, we can one-off mentor. I've done it many times, but we're bandwidth limited. We need
Right.
One of the reasons why incubators and accelerators have proliferated is because they're great force multipliers. They take advantage of a volunteer base in many cases of mentors and past successful, folks either in industries or in starting companies, and match them up with companies in a structured way to get those folks the help they need. So that's probably the most glaring piece that we're missing, that we've identified through the program. The other is a corollary, or is kind of secondary to this. We have a CEO gap, if you will, where companies, we may have figured out that they have a viable model. Maybe we've provided them some coaching, but they now recognize they need a CEO. But how do they find that? How do they identify that person? And I have my own theories. There's a lot of different ways to address that, but my theory on the way to do that actually is to have a fleshed out and fully functional mentor program.
Right.
It's worked well at some of the peer ESOs that I've been involved in, where they encourage their mentors as the company matures to take an active role in their client, and it's an organic thing. You can't just. It's not like it's an eHarmony for.
Right.
All right. This is, hey, let us introduce you to half a dozen different mentors and different pieces as you go through our program. You see which ones you click with, which ones fill your need, and which ones that those mentors, it fires them up, gives them a passion for to get involved in your company, and see what develops there. And that's another piece of this systematic process. We have to have this critical mass of mentors. We have to have a way for them to engage, a structured way to engage. We have to have this pipeline of companies, and we start introducing them to each other so that those matches happen organically. And I think as we, kind of start this snowball rolling down the hill, this process will get easier. And I've seen that happen with several other programs that, I've mentored with or helped coach other companies through. So I have no doubt that we can do this here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think A&M, we're good. We have a vast network, our former student network. And I think you're right. We're good at those one-off, like finding people mentors, but you're right. It needs to be more structured, more systematic so we can help more people. I mean, I know how busy you and Lene are. I mean, it is a bandwidth problem.
I was gonna say that, I was first gonna ask, if I'm a company that's not quite right for TNVC, is there kind of a pre-TNVC program? And you answered the question, which is basically the bandwidth is going to limit some of that. But if the chancellor, the president, the provost are listening, I'm also hearing your advice to filling that gap so that we can, as Texas A&M, become a competitive force. What I mean by that is in a good way of putting out impactful stuff into the market, is to have some type of incubator program with a mentorship component. Am I putting words in your mouth, or is that right?
No, you're exactly right. It has to be. And I use the term ESO, and let me explain why I call it ESO, because incubator and accelerator, that's a semantics thing. It means something different.
Right.
We need some sort of program that takes advantage of this awesome network of successful alumni that we have. Right. And takes those folks that want to give back, and give back in a way, I don't mean writing a check. I mean, give back in a way where they engage and want to see impact out of their engagement with the university. And plug them in with our own technologies that are emerging from our labs. I mean, this is a win-win for us. Right. We do this, and these companies become successful. It's going to then in turn give funds back to our university so that we can replicate the cycle. It's not going to happen overnight, but we've seen it with other institutions where it is a repeatable and to some degree self-funding cycle.
Mm-hmm. You guys are Aggies and I'm not, so you know this even more than I do, but I've seen it from kind of the outsider perspective, that unlike other institutions that have done this successfully, Chris, if we were to do a SWOT analysis, one of our strengths is this network of Aggies who really care about doing good in the world, supporting other Aggies doing good in the world, and we do not seem to be tapping that correctly in this ecosystem that we're talking about.
You're exactly right. And I'm gonna use another example here that may get me in trouble, but I've started preaching it.
It's 2020, man. You got to throw your caution to the wind.
Yes, exactly right. So we do a great job at raising money from our alumni. We have one of the largest alumni base in the world. A lot of successful folks.
Yes.
All right, but a fair amount of these folks are not interested in what you might consider traditional giving. Right? These are folks that are not as or maybe they're interested in doing a little bit of the name on the building or endowment type of conversation, but they want to see some impact with their investment. Like their philanthropy might be philanthropic interest might be around getting a solution to a certain industry problem or medical issue, right? So something we've seen done with our peers successfully is an engagement where you go out to successful alumni and you ask them to give back in the form of writing a check, but as part of a fund, right? As part of a pool of money, whatever investment vehicle or financial vehicle you call it, that fills that capital gap. And this goes back to your question, Beth, about what these gaps might be. This is another big one for us. Our companies might our spinouts might get an SBIR or some early grant funds, but they need to go and raise money, early high risk money, before actually going and hiring their ideal folks and actually getting their technology out to market. And I'm not talking about a ton of money. I'm talking about the $500,000 to a couple $1 million range. High risk angel or maybe early Series A type of money. Well, other universities such as the UC system is good at this. They have peeled off a piece of their permanent fund and reinvest that into their own technologies emerging from their labs. All right, so that's cool from a couple ways, because number one, you're actually putting the money into something that can perform. It's an investment. It's not a hey, I'm just donating. So it could actually come back and perform. But even more importantly, it is going to help those technologies get out to market and then pay revenues back to the university in the form of licensing dollars.
Right.
So, and again, it perpetuates this cycle. And I'll tell you, there is a certain a group of successful alumni that love this idea. They want to give back in a way that they can see some actual impact. In fact, some of them even want to get involved. They want to be part of the planning and the vision and mentorship. Maybe they come and be a speaker at a program like this. And we've seen other institutions, even in the state of Texas, like Rice and UT, implement some programs that follow a similar model that have worked pretty well. So it's time for A&M to do the same.
For the former student engagement, certainly could be money, doesn't necessarily need to be. And I used to always think of it as, well, I've got my philanthropy pocket and I've got my investment pocket. Which one am I, I'm not going to necessarily reach into one if you're asking me for the other. But you're talking about something too that might actually be a third pocket of being able to impact the university that I love, that a lot of people say has formed me into the person I am today, in a way that's also making an investment, a true investment into elements of the university that are going to help it and society long term. Right?
Yeah.
That's genius. I love that.
Yeah, I was just thinking that's a great way. I got a call last night, from like the foundation or whatever, asking for me to like donate money, but how awesome would it be for me to donate money knowing that it's going to a fund that could help, not only like get Aggies, get their inventions out there, but bring back in money. So it's almost like, you're investing a little bit, but the return, which you're not getting personally, but it's going back to that university that you love. And then, you might still have the opportunity to not just give money, but then go and see that company that you're donating towards and actually maybe get involved, whether it's
exactly right.
An executive or, on the board or something, I mean, that's a great idea. And I think
I've used a piece of this story or this pitch, if you will, to solicit the investors or the sponsors, we call them, in TNVC. And we've given last few years near $500,000 a year. Vast majority of those funds are coming externally out of conversations exactly like the one that we're talking about having with alumni or with companies owned by alumni that are looking for this type of relationship with A&M's commercialization programs. So we've proven that the model works, that there are actually people out there willing to give real money. And I personally feel like tip of the iceberg. I mean, we got what is it, 400 some odd thousand living alumni.
I think it's close to 500,000. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, we are one of the largest alumni bases in the world. We should be able to go out to them with a story, with an opportunity for them to engage. And even when we pull a really small percentage of those folks, I mean, it's going to be a game changer.
Yes. Well, I'm thinking about, like, as well, the people that like aren't going to give actual money, but are doing that mentoring and like donating their time instead of being able to give funds. Because I'm thinking a lot of like younger alumni who, are becoming really successful in whatever role they've gone into, but aren't quite ready to start donating a lot of money, but they can give time. I'm thinking, Jack, like the Stephen Masons of the world.
Absolutely.
Who
give so much. Yeah.
Dickinson Wright, who, he's the one that helped start our office hour program with IP attorneys. And since doing that has donated over $100,000 worth of time, to the program. But we, A&M, and, I could get in trouble for this, but there's no formal way for the university to recognize that kind of donation, which
exactly right.
is amazing,
And yet people are still willing to do it, which also shows not just the quantity, Chris, of alumni, but the quality and the hunger for engagement that this alumni pool is looking for. And I would say, if not the number one of the top alumni pools that are looking for that type of engagement with their former university, their former institution. I don't know, maybe one of the military academies has something similar, but a lot of folks really, really care about this place, and for good reason. You mentioned that you give away, a significant amount of money at the TNVC. Could you tell us a little bit more about? Because I don't think we got into the idea of the prizes, or if I win, or are there tiers of winning, or how does that work?
Yeah, and we kind of got a little bit of sidetracked. I got to continue explain the wrap up of the process.
Yeah, sure,
right?
yeah.
All right, so you go through that screening I told you about earlier. You're one of the top 20 or so in the state of Texas, and you get invited to participate in TNVC, which happens every May, mid-May every year. When there's not a pandemic, it actually happens in College Station. And we did it virtually this last year, which
was awesome.
Proud of.
Yeah, successfully.
You get invited to actually pitch, but this isn't a pitch competition, remember. We're filling that room. Those judges in that room have a very defined way of thinking. In fact, the majority of the judges in that room are investors or represent investment money. We have relationships with angel groups all over the country that come in. We have IP attorneys that have worked with tons of startups like this. And we've already gone through the process of evaluating the technology. So now we're evaluating the business and the potential for return on investment for those investors. So we use a term that's not a real world, at least not an Oxford dictionary yet. We see investability, all right? And we hand out a rubric that the judges can look at, kind of a score sheet, but it's purely for their own benefit. Because ultimately they need to decide if they were writing a check today, who would they write the check to? Who do they think they're most likely to get the money back from? It's not who has the best pitch or who speaks the most clearly or has the best PowerPoint skills. It's about the whole package. Do they have the team? Do they have the market? Do they have the ability to protect the intellectual property behind their technology? And it's a multi-round, 2-day process. They go through some semifinals rounds. Then the top 6 then go to the finals. Those finalists split up a minimum of $150,000 of non-dilutive cash, by the way. All right, so it's unrestricted funds. And then the rest of the 20-ish semifinalists that didn't make it get the opportunity to participate in an elevator pitch competition, so they all get stage time. They also get the opportunity to have a booth and engage with this investor audience, of which there's a couple hundred in attendance, and that's where the real magic happens. I mean, it's easy to sell the idea, hey, we're giving away $500,000, right? But what we've heard from some of our best past winners is that they come back usually a year or more later and tell us things like, man, I love that $25,000 check that I got, but I met my top 2 investors in my Series A round in your audience. And one of those was my lead, and this is a real one. I'm not going to name the company. They actually came in. One of those was my lead investor for $250,000. And I was able to close my $1.5 million round in the 6 weeks following TNVC because of the exposure that I got at TNVC.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So at that point, the $25,000 that person won actually is an afterthought. All right. I mean, how much did we move them down the pathway to get into the market? And what we've proven, because we've done this for a number of years now, all right, so what we've shown is this kind of multi-level process that involves a bunch of entrepreneurs, expertise that we have inside of our university community in evaluating these technologies, our great alumni that come and volunteer to judge this. What we have done now is shown that this process works. We are either really good at identifying who is likely to succeed, or we are providing the resources, the funding to help those companies succeed. And really, it's a hybrid of the two. And we have the numbers to back that up. We know that over 90% of the companies that made it to our finals, that's that top 6 every year, are still in business. Now, we're talking about 6 years later. We used to run this stat for only the first few years. Normally the 80-20 rule applies after 3 years in small business, okay? 80% of the business have failed, startups have failed at 3 years. We're over 90%. Right?
That's amazing.
So we're really good at identifying who these guys are and helping them succeed. And we're talking, I mean, this year we had a couple of COVID-19 related technologies that have hopefully been accelerated in their process of getting out to market. I mean, we've had some amazing pediatric technologies come through via our partnership with the Southwest National Pediatric Device Consortium. They give away $50,000 every year, by the way. I mean, all these little neat, technologies that have come through our process and now are getting closer to market, or in some cases have gone to market. We'd like to take a tiny little bit of credit for that.
Yes, for sure. And again, if certain people are listening or watching, this podcast or webcast, I think Chris is right. This is the tip of the iceberg. Look at all the good that can be done in a program that is conceived and executed well, that is blowing the statistics. 90% it's not just flipping that stat of 80-20. It's flipping and increasing. And how much more could we do if we had the type of let's call it the system or the institutional investment to make sure that we were able to build that up to the full iceberg potential. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I got to meet 3 of the past winners or runner-ups. Last year we did that kind of video project. So I know what my favorite technology was. I really liked Vitals, and there was one that I can't remember, but they were out at like the J Labs, I think, and they had something that you put in your spine to let your doctor know that you weren't recovering. I don't know, it was great. But what has been your favorite technology that you've seen? It doesn't have to be a winner, but what's one that you really remember that stood out to you?
Oh, that's a good question. There have been a few good ones over the years.
Is that like picking a favorite child, though? It's hard, right?
It's put me on the spot. I like some of the ones that have come through that I'm not going to name a specific one, but I'm going to tell you a class of technologies that I really like come through. All right. So it's the ones that see an entrenched market, there's a very standardized way of doing things out there, and they come in and totally disrupt it. All right. They come in and recognize, well, here, I'll give you one example. Okay. So we had a technology come through called Recycle 3 years ago now. Ended up winning TNVC that year. And they were taking computer waste and applying a process that isolated the most valuable parts of that computer waste. All right. And it has the potential to totally disrupt the current way of getting these really expensive elements for producing computers, and recycling them. It'll change the whole that whole commodity market around those, around those elements. So I love to see those ones that come in and really disrupt this like entrenched business model. That's the ones where I personally get excited.
Do you like the troublemakers, which
Sure,
is not
right. I like the troublemakers. I hear you. I love that.
That fits you well, Chris.
Yeah, I cause trouble myself. So
in a good way, a disruptor, right?
Yes,
Chris the disruptor, Scotti.
Yeah,
that's on the side of his car.
I like a wrestling name. Like that would be like if you were a
the disruptor.
The disruptor.
Sound like a transformer.
So you've got February's not too far away, right?
No.
People that are even interested in this, how should they reach out to you about getting more information?
Best ways through their website, like everything else. So
Okay.
we got various social media platforms. You Google Texas New Ventures Competition will pop up. TexasNVC.org is the website.
Okay.
That's where you apply. You can also subscribe to our mailing list there, so you'll get notified of the application process. But it's not too early to start getting ready. Get your pitch together. Start getting your act like you're about to go talk to an investor. Start getting your deck ready. Start getting and if you don't know what to put in that deck or how to tell that story, you need to find an entrepreneurial support organization. Find a mentor.
Right.
Find somebody to help you get ready. And that goes to our partners here within Texas A&M University system. If you're involved in engineering, get in touch with my office or with me directly. And for the rest of the university, you can go through TAMYP. AgriLife goes through their research office. We have some resources to help our own technologies get ready, and there are various resources around the state as well.
Okay. So what is next? Obviously, you've got February coming around, but is TNVC growing? What's going on with T's? What's going on next for y'all?
I can't talk too much about it yet because it's so
intriguing.
Okay,
yeah.
But
the disruptor is coming.
I'll tease something here. So, you talked about how I was able to. We talked about how we can kind of tell the story of where our gaps are.
Right.
And the big one being this entrepreneurial support organization. We're cooking up something to be able to offer this to fill that gap for our friends within the Texas A&M University system.
That's awesome.
Because we've recognized that that's a real problem, and that we've got to address it in a long-term way. We've done these little ad hocs, we've done these little kind of short-lived programs. We have to put a longer-term investment into filling that entrepreneurial support gap. I'm happy to be a small part of that process.
So watch this space for that reveal eventually, right?
Okay.
That sounds great.
Exactly.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah. Well,
And then
thanks, Chris. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, TexasNVC.org. Is that
Got
right?
it.
TexasNVC.org.
Yep.
We'll
And
drop that in the note section for sure.
Right.
So,
if I did my job, you should be seeing it on the screen right now.
Right.
So.
yeah, right here.
Right there, right.
My son would know how to put it like right here.
Right there? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Maybe we could hire. We could
We hire your son. We'll see how I can do. He can judge me. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
not too bad for an old guy.
You've done pretty good so far.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of kids myself, so
Yeah,
sometimes
like
it's
you have a lot of IT support over
I do.
your house.
I have a large help desk
Yeah.
in my house. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, Chris. This has been awesome.
I enjoyed this conversation. You can tell I get excited about it.
Oh yeah. It's always good to talk to you.
Well, that's why you're so good at what you do. If you didn't have passion for it,
Yeah.
you know, you couldn't be so good. So thank you, Chris, for joining us. It was good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
So again, my name is Beth Duermeyer and my co-host is
Jack Manhire.
And this is the Idea to Impact podcast. Join in on us next week where you will continue to hear more inspiring stories from faculty, inventors, entrepreneurs, and other really great friends of our office. So we'll see you next week.